we continue our analysis of the US-Iran war. And in this war, there are three major questions that will determine the outcome of this war, as well as the world afterwards. Okay, and these three questions are, number one, will the US launch a ground invasion? So right now, the United States and Israel are primarily focused on an air war, striking Iran from a distance. In the past, we would call this siege warfare. And as long as it remains an air war, the United States can choose to de-escalate and withdraw from the Middle East. They would lose this war, but the loss would not be catastrophic. Whereas if they choose to launch a ground invasion, it would escalate very quickly and they would be trapped in Iran for the next 5 to 10 years. It would be a catastrophe whether or not they win or lose. Because in order to fight a ground war, the United States would have to institute a national draft where a young man as young as 18 would be forced to join the army and be sent to fight in Iran. Okay? So that's the first big question for us. Will the United States send in ground troops? And remember, there's the idea of mission creep, where maybe in the beginning you're like, I'll send out 1,000 troops to do a small mission. But then it doesn't go well, so you send in 2,000, okay? It slowly creeps up. It's what we call mission creep. And that's how the United States embroiled itself in Vietnam. All right, so that's the first big question. Second big question is, will nukes be used? There's a lot of concern online that Israel is preparing a nuclear strike on Iran because they really don't like how the war is going and they want to reclaim the initiative. Nukes are a taboo in geopolitics. The Americans used them at the end of World War II, and no one's used them ever since. If Israel were to use tactical nuclear weapons, they would break this universal taboo, and we might find ourselves in a nuclear apocalypse, okay? So that's a great concern that everyone has right now. And the third question is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. This is the third holiest site in the Islamic world. There's Mecca, there's Medina, and there's the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Muslims believe that it is from the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem where Muhammad ascended to heaven. And the Jews believe that the Al-Aqsa Mosque sits on the site of their temple, which is the house of God. So religious Jews, extremists, want to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque to rebuild the third temple. And if the religious Jews, the extremists, destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque, then the 2 billion Muslims in this world would be religiously obligated to go to war against Israel. Okay? So these are the three big questions that will determine how this war will determine the future of the world. Okay, so in this class, I teach you game theory to make predictions about the future. So right now, I'm gonna make 3 predictions, and then I will show you my analysis as to how I make these predictions, okay? Now, what's important to understand is that these are only my guesses based on my analysis. And whether or not they turn out to be correct will determine the validity of my analysis. I don't have inside information. I don't know more than you do, okay? I'm just working out of public knowledge and doing game theory analysis. So according to game theory, this is yes. The United States will send in ground troops. According to game theory, this is no. And number 3 is yes. Okay? So what I'm going to do is spend the next 2 classes explaining to you my game theory analysis as to how I come to these conclusions. And we can watch how world events unfold. Now I want you to understand something, which is that for my theory to be valid, for my analysis to be valid, I have to be correct on all three. Okay? If I miss one, then all my theory is wrong. I know there's a lot of concern from around the world that nukes will be used. And I am 100% confident that nukes will not be used at this time in this war. And if I'm wrong, I apologize to the world, okay? But at the same time, we'll all be dead anyway, so it doesn't really matter, all right? Okay, all right, so let me explain my analysis, okay? So remember, today, what I'm going to do is do number 1 and number 2, explain to you why Israel will not use nuclear weapons and why there will be a ground invasion. And then next class, I'll explain number 3 to you, okay? That's a plan for this week. All right, so to understand what's going on, I need to teach some basic geopolitical theory, okay? So in military affairs, in geopolitics, there's a concept called escalation ladder. Escalation ladder.